Assalamu alaikum. Good evening to all of you. Hi, sir. Assalamu
Good
alaikum.
evening, sir.
Walaikum salam.
Good
Good
evening,
evening,
sir.
sir.
Good evening, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Yeah, good
Good afternoon.
afternoon and salam alaikum. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
मैडम इस बार 78 पार्टनर ने रजिस्ट्रेशन किया है
Okay.
जिसमें हम 70 के आसपास लोग ज्वाइन करते हैं हमारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स
Okay, you want to wait for
एज
some
यूजुअल
time?
दे आर फ्रॉम डिफरेंट पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया मोस्टली फ्रॉम नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न स्टेट्स
ठीक
वेस्ट
है.
बंगाल एंड केरला आल्सो
Okay, okay. You had one session earlier, right? You
नो
had a
आफ्टर
session.
आफ्टर यू मैम देयर इज वन मोर सेशन
Oh, okay. Only after my. Okay.
सो
Okay, we can wait for a minute. No problem if this
Yeah,
is the
ma'am.
first session. Okay. I think you should start. Let
Yes,
them
ma'am.
join as they come along.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, ma'am.
Yeah.
Very good evening to participants and all of you. Today we have a very, I will say, the learned speaker from the Department of Education, and she is Dr. Shakila T. Shamsu, ma'am. And ma'am need no much more introduction. But what I'm going to introduce about ma'am, basically participant मैं इसलिए बताना चाहता हूँ मैम के बारे में कि she has achieved a lot and done for especially for teachers and education so many work. For that purpose, I'm just introducing ma'am. She did PhD in education, MA in political science with gold medal, postgraduate diploma in distance education, and also holds the degree of law. Shakila ma'am का जो कोर एरिया है, आई विल से द स्पेशलाइजेशन इज एजुकेशनल प्लानिंग एंड पॉलिसी मेकिंग, टीचर एजुकेशन, इंफॉर्मेशन कम्युनिकेशन टेक्नोलॉजी, open and distance learning, and inclusive education as well. Shakila ma'am have a long experience of 14 years working in MHRD, Government of India, and she was the OSD new education policy, which has been drafted in 2020, NEP 2020, popularly known as Department of Education, Ministry of Education, Government of India, and she was the nodal officer of flagship program of Government of India, which is known as National Mission for Teachers Training, and later it was popularly known as Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya National Mission for Teachers Training Program, जिसको हम कहते हैं कि PMMMTTP. Similarly, ma'am has launched various teachers training programs in 12th five-year plan, in which I will just tell you 2 and 3 program, which is popularly known that CALM, that is Center for Academic Leadership and Educational Management. दूसरा जो था बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट प्रोग्राम था जो लीडरशिप एकेडमिक प्रोग्राम, that is known as LEAP, LEAP, and third one was annual refresher program for teaching, that is ARPIT. ये 3 बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट प्रोग्राम थे जो मैम के, मैं कहूंगा कि उनके चेयरशिप में या उनके हेडशिप में ये प्रोग्राम रन किया. Participants, Shakila ma'am is, I will say, this just the beautiful combination of academic caliber as well as administrative expert. She is the versatile, I will say, the resource person, an active resource person, and highly engaged in different academic activities. और उसमें से मैं जहाँ तक समझता हूँ कि मैम बहुत मुश्किल से हमारे लिए वक्त निकालती हैं हमारे HRDC MU के लिए. And lastly, in fact, she had the authority on NEP 2020. So अगर आपको कोई भी डाउट हो, मैम बहुत ही, मैं जहाँ तक मैं खुद सुनता हूँ उनका लेक्चर, मैम बहुत ही डिस्कशन मोड में आपसे बात करेंगी. और आप अगर आप जैसे पार्टिसिपेंट, कल आप लोगों ने बहुत एक्टिवली पार्टिसिपेट किया था सर के लेक्चर में, तो आज अगर आपको एनईपी में कोई भी डाउट्स, चाहे उसके इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के पार्ट में, चाहे उसके फॉर्मुलेशन के पार्ट में हो, तो मुझे लगता है कि टुडे वी हैव द वन ऑफ द बेस्ट स्पीकर ऑन द टॉपिक एनईपी 2020. जो टॉपिक होगा मैम का आज का, वो होलिस्टिक एंड मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी एजुकेशन होगा. मैम उस पर बात करेंगे. मैम, थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस. With these words, now the mic over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Aftab, and good afternoon to all the participants. As Dr. Aftab rightly said, I would really like to, before I start talking about holistic and multidisciplinary education, I would really like to have a few of you at least, if you could either share your experiences or problems or any implementation challenges or any thoughts on NEP. I would be happy. It's about 3:56 now. Maybe till 4:10, I can take in 2 or 3 of you if you can share your thoughts or any
Good
problems
evening,
that
ma'am.
you have. Yeah, good evening, please. Please go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Karma Chotan Gutia from Sanchaman Limbu Government College. It's in Sikkim. We are affiliated to Sikkim University. One of the major concern that we have right now, even during this time, the current policy, education policy that we have, and the NEP that we're going to implement from next year onwards, the main issue is that of student-teacher ratio. It's not very favorable, and because we are government institution, we have this responsibility that we have to take in the students, whether they come from lesser percentage or very good percentage. We have the uh, this responsibility that we have to take all of them, those whosoever apply. So we cannot have a cutoff range wherein we take only the cream of the students. So student ratio is something that we face a lot of issue with. And going along with NEP 2020, I have seen the syllabus which we're supposed to teach. Like, I'm also in the drafting committee of the syllabus for my subject, that is geography. And it's a big deal for us. I don't know, personally, I'm not even able to comprehend, like, how are we supposed to give quality education when we are are in shortage ourselves, the teachers. And we have students, as our batch goes up to 100 plus for general courses, and even for honors courses it's more than 50. So how to deal with this, ma'am?
I take on board your concern and I'll try and answer that. Let me get in two more people so that I can take it all together. Any other participant? Two more participants. Yes, Abhishek, please go ahead.
Ma'am, I just want to ask some
Please introduce
regarding the
yourself.
higher edu.
Please introduce yourself.
Ma'am, my name is Abhishek Verma. I'm working as an assistant professor in electronics and communication from Lucknow in SRMU University.
Okay.
Ma'am, my question is related to the higher education. In NEP 2020, we realized that today the higher education is moving more towards the industrial aspect rather than moving towards the theoretical aspects. So, how we can collaborate with industry and industrial professionals so we can actually make our student more industrial prone rather than pursuing higher education.
The third participant, I can take one more question.
Ma'am, may I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm
Hello.
Govt. I'm from Kuch Bihar, West Bengal. So my concern is, my background is chemistry. So the thing is that in the NEP, so it is recommended that all the students have to take internship program for like 120 hours. This is a compulsory. And right now we have started first batch for the internship, but I don't think it is kind of it would be useful for them because it's a huge number of students. We have around 1700 students in this batch in our college only. And we don't, I mean, even the state, even I don't think even the country, overall, it is not possible to accommodate all the students to have a fruitful internship. So what is your opinion on that and how we can solve this thing?
Okay. I think there was someone else who was wanting to ask, so we'll take that question also, and then I'll take up all of them together.
Hi,
Yeah, please.
good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bakhtiar Khan from Aligarh Muslim University, Department of Agricultural Science. My concern is regarding the apprenticeship embedded degree programs that the government has introduced through sector skill council for programs. They created 37 sector skill councils. But when we see the ground reality of the entire program, I spoke with the registrars and vice chancellors of two universities apart from Aligarh Muslim University. I spoke with Raja Mahendra Pratap University, that is just newly created one in Aligarh. And I found that, there are no takers for these kind of programs, although these are exceptionally good. I'm sure, I mean, you know much better than me. So what are the steps the government is planning to have the wide acceptability of these kind of programs? Because these are really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me take up what Karma was asking, which is a real major concern that she's talking about in terms of a very skewed faculty student ratio in states like Sikkim and others, where their positions are not there, and at the same time the NEP is demanding, I don't know how she says that it is a very broad syllabus, because the idea is we reduce the curriculum load in a certain manner. That is the spirit of NEP is to have a very, I would say, a very taught kind of a curriculum, where you don't really go about spreading it too wide, but rather you go around spreading it in terms of giving more breadth of knowledge. So what is really happening is curriculum framing, I think, has gone a little haywire, because traditionally in our own biases, we think that certain things are non-negotiable and must be included, whereas that is already been covered by the students when they've had it up to their class 12. And there are certain parts of it which we can do away with and keep the core part of it. But yes, if the student numbers are unviable, obviously it is going to be a pressure on the existing faculty. And the only thing that has nothing to do with NEP, it's only a solution that I'm trying to suggest, because these are fundamental issues, whether NEP was there or not there. If the number of faculty are not in place, then any conduct of any higher education program becomes a challenge. But the only thing that one does at that time is to take in people on ad hoc or contract, and all courses which are of a nature which is industry oriented or which is skill based courses, you try and get in people from the industry or the sector, so that they are taken in on as adjunct faculty, and they are people who come in from the industry. So really there is no real solution, and that has, as I said, not an NEP driven kind of a problem, but the fact that the course content that we are talking is categorized into 6 types of courses, where the core disciplinary areas, I would still feel that the faculty should be able to prioritize on that. Since the multidisciplinary would go in for other discipline areas, the non-core areas, which is the other interdisciplinary, those faculty. So the 2 priorities, leaving out the ability enhancement, the value added, the common courses, which are supposed to be anyway integrated within the discipline that you teach, and the skill enhancement. Within this, the emphasis can come in on the core disciplinary and the interdisciplinary. The rest of it, you may have to depend, like skill enhancement may have to depend on industry or those who are there in the sector and actually practically involved with it. Value added, you can give it to concerned faculty who deal with, let us say, media studies you take up. The faculty in the college need not do that, but that can be a faculty coming, or it is a course on Internet of Things, IoT or so. Then the college faculty need not be there. So that way, maybe a rationalization in the work distribution, which can be done at the time of planning the curriculum itself, might help to ameliorate that situation. I'll try and see whether I can get in more when I go into the talk. But on the points that the others have sort of raised, industry relevant apprenticeship embedded courses, and the concern whether internships, because internships, when we say all undergraduate students will do internships, it is not internship in industry or corporate. That is an undoable, that is a sort of a non-doable kind of a situation. You cannot have 44 crore, that is about 44 crore students going into industry, because even if you say there are 44 crore students, we are talking in terms of, let us say, out of that entire number, about 40 crore students going in for let us say internships. It is not expected that all UG students, except engineering students and professional students like management degrees or engineering students or medical students or agriculture students or pharmacy students, these people go into their own sector for their internship. But the non-technical, which is the general education stream, they go in for internships which are of a very different order, where the UGC's guidelines very clearly stipulate it could be being associated with a retired educationist, a scientist, making a study in a museum or a library, or interning with a community project, or studying a government scheme, and so on. So there is a whole range of topics that we have given, and that undergraduate student is not going into the industry, but we look into these possibilities for internships. Now, the apprenticeship embedded courses, very rightly perceived that they are very well actually to be done by the students, and the importance of skilling as a part of the requirements today is well recognized. Now, the reasons why students do not take up is a lot of, let us say, influence that comes in from baggage of their own parents, of their own senior peers, who think that this was not done and this is good enough, that we need not go in, not realizing that if they do not take up such courses, it is unlikely that they get employed, as rightly said, because you can't make higher education purely industry driven or purely job oriented, but it remains that employment and jobs are one of the major functions that we look at when we are acquiring higher education. Therefore, the need to have skills, and the idea that for all this the government is the only savior that is there, is an absolutely sort of unworkable situation. It's not the government that needs to go around spreading a message. People need to perceive that they need to acquire this kind of skills if they need to be gainfully employed. The government has only done in bringing out a policy which has made it enabling for people to take up skills as part of a undergraduate program, which was hitherto not done. And therefore, the whole idea of multidisciplinary education is trying to accommodate those very critical areas which students need to have, and the kind of graduate skills and the kind of 21st century skills that would help them to get jobs. So the fact that an engineering faculty is recognizing that you need to have the practical orientation and the problem solving approaches which are needed by the industry is a felt need, because the failure of the engineering education in our country is visible by the fact that when we opened up and liberalized engineering education, you had a huge mushrooming of engineering institutions which were offering very substandard engineering education, and the demand supply mismatch has now resulted in a number of engineering colleges in various parts of the country actually going to get closed down, because there are no students going to come in for those kind of courses which are not getting them the kind of jobs. So the need for engineering education to have a balance between the theoretical and the industry part of it, and not just engineering, even the other regular courses like the one that was being asked about, the embedded courses, these are all essential, and not just engineering students getting technical skills and getting the kind of vocational skills that we are talking of. All of it have to go in for industry academia linkages, and that is what has been factored within the NEP. Yes, Bhaktiyar, you had a rejoinder to your question?
No, so principally you are right. What you are saying makes a lot of sense. But from where I am coming up with this question is basically I spoke with these universities without putting the names. I am telling you that this newly come up university has around 400 colleges affiliated with this university. Now, when I visit the colleges and I ask the students, for their aspirations, I found the very obvious answers, like they want to get into industry quickly, because most of these B towns have students who are coming up from very marginal backgrounds, and they want to just get into the industry and start earning quickly. And for these people, I mean, you are right. For higher education, there has to be a different roadmap altogether. But for these students, the program was to have at least few sector skill council colleges in every city. So, for example, we are living in a
No. I think I'll make it very clear in my talk. We do not really want to have skill set universities separate from higher education. The whole idea of holistic and multidisciplinary is all undergraduate programs will have a component of skilling within it. So let me elaborate that, because the entire policy towards vocationalization and skilling was completely wrong, because I come from a planning commission background, and we looked at skills separately and we looked at education separately. And the actual aspect was that somewhere down the line it fell between the stools, and between two stools. And instead of that, now we have realized that higher education and skilling are not to be seen as two separate streams, but are to be embedded together, have to be integrated together. And that is the whole idea of multidisciplinary education. Now, during induction programs that we have, and also during counseling that we do for our students, it is very important to sort of make them understand that if there are no takers, the skill part of it, now we have said you have to take it. It is a component of your undergraduate program. Once you launch the 4-year undergraduate program, you cannot have a college which says that in our college, I will not offer a skill-based course because I don't have the faculty or I don't have the laboratories or so on. Every college, every undergraduate college will have to offer a skill enhancement course. It is embedded within the 4-year program. And if there are, other than this, apprenticeship embedded programs which are being done through the Sector Skills Council, that would be like an add-on, and that could be like a value additional course, which can be an extra credit that the student can do. Now, the question of bringing about a kind of an advocacy with parents, with the civil society, with the community, with the local people who need to be actually bringing this to the fore and making students and parents realize that this is very important is a matter of actually doing a better kind of, let us say, spreading the word around, awareness around, and the need for it. So the need that today is not to look at skilling and education in two separate verticals. The need is to look at both of it together. And I'll make it more clear as I go into the topic. So thank you all for that initial observations and responses. Let me now come into the topic that we have on holistic and multidisciplinary education, and why did the National Education Policy make this recommendation in moving towards a very flexible undergraduate program with a number of flexibilities that have come in. So that would require me to give you as a faculty and to convince you all that it is almost imperative that we have this kind of an undergraduate program. The need that most of us here are beneficiaries of a education system that came out from the previous policies of 1968 and 86, and which was emphasizing more on structured systems of education, which did not offer or give scope to flexible choices, was appropriate at that point of time. But what is to be noted is that we are all here as faculty whose education took place in the 20th century. And we have a student clientele who is coming to us, who are all the children born in this particular century. So the NEP is really factoring in certain drivers of change that we need to take into account. And that is exactly the reasons which have been resulting in the recommendation for a holistic and integrated multidisciplinary education. So while saying this, you must also understand, as someone speaking from the point of view of both education planning and policy making, education policies, like in any other sector, keep happening at regular intervals. And all of you are aware that independent India has seen 3 education policies, one in 68, one in 86, and now in 2020. And no policy is to be said as being bad or good, because it is not a gap filling. One policy is not doing a gap filling of a previous policy. Rather, every policy is responding to certain changes that is happening within the society. So the 68 policy, in its strength that it existed then, was perfectly appropriate, where the emphasis would have been more on access rather than on quality, because we are a new independent nation and we wanted to spread both school education and higher education to reach across the length and breadth of the country. And to some extent, even equity, because we know that education is aspirational by nature, and we wanted that all cross sections of the society gain access to education. So that was the driving force that was there in 68. But at that time also, we wanted to set up certain premier institutions, and you're seeing at that time a number of certain excellent institutions that were set up at that time. 86 policy, we shifted more from access and equity towards quality, towards vocationalization, towards inclusion and equity, in a much more manner, including the whole emphasis in terms of adult education and so on. Now, the first policy of the 21st century is the NEP 2020. And the changes that the NEP 2020 was factoring is the drivers of the change which forces us to move away from structured systems of education. What are those drivers of changes? And why is it that the degrees that we have got as art, science, commerce, engineering, medicine, pharmacy, agriculture, whatever you have, which are silo based, can no longer be relevant in the coming time? And if our students have only silo based degrees, they are likely to remain unemployed. That arises because in an education ecosystem, the two constructs that we are talking about, or the two components that we are talking about, is the component or the construct of knowledge and the component or the construct of learning. Now, these two critical components, knowledge and learning, as they were situated in the 20th century and as they are situated today, have completely metamorphosed or completely changed. How have they changed? When you had the earlier times, the idea that knowledge was seen as existing in its intrinsic self to the exclusion of other knowledge disciplines. So the idea that chemistry is insular to languages, to sociology, to geography, to history, and that chemistry in its intrinsic self was a discipline that existed by itself. It was it was always seen as separate from others and not including others. That insularity brought about a degree of exclusion to other disciplines. But at the turn of the century, we had very much a lot of thinking and the realization that knowledge does not exist in hard concrete buckets, and that knowledge by nature is a very porous. When it is porous, there is a lot of seepage and there is a lot of interconnections that are being built up, and that knowledge does not exist to the exclusion of other, but it interconnects with other disciplines, and therefore it is looked at in a very integrative manner, not in an insular manner, but in a very integrative manner. And that led to the new notions of interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity. So a certain knowledge discipline started becoming broader in scope and accommodating, let us say, concepts and ideas from other disciplines, and therefore the breadth of that knowledge is widening, and it also resulted in new knowledge disciplines coming into existence. So if you talk about biotechnology as a subject, you would never think of it as a subject in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. You see it more towards the end of the last century and the beginning of this century, where the subjects of life sciences interacted with technology to result in that. Bioinformatics, these were all interdisciplinary disciplines that come out because of the construct of knowledge being seen as integrative by nature. So when knowledge is no longer insular, we must embrace the notions of interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, cross-disciplinarity, and not give our students degrees which go by that age-old understanding that you and I had when we did our education, and which was correct then, but no longer relevant now, where silo-based degrees are actually becoming a redundant idea. The reason why you are seeing an en masse migration of our students to foreign countries arises because as a student, I get a choice to take up, let us say, mechanical engineering with anthropology along with music. And that is permissible. Whereas here we cannot even visualize that because we think that no, these are all separate disciplines. And what is the point of a student? But not realizing that the construct of knowledge has to embrace many aspects and many disciplines, and it is left to the learner's choice to decide which combination of disciplines that they want to take. So knowledge became realized as multidimensional, as not being insular but integrative, And therefore, the notions of multidisciplinary education was seen as almost being an inevitable, imperative need of the 21st century higher education ecosystem. Not only higher education, even school education ecosystem. The whole idea of education that we see as being multidimensional and integrative across disciplines that we thought about. Learning also, as seen in the 20th century, was largely focusing on the cognitive part of it, on the theoretical part of it, and on the conceptual part of it. And that is what we try to do in our classrooms. And in the 21st century, we are talking about 4 pillars of learning. There is a UNESCO report, and if you Google it, you will get it, about the Delors Commission report, which talks about the 4 pillars of learning. And the first pillar of learning is what we are all very, very familiar with as faculty, which is the learning to know. The learning to know is the cognitive dissemination of information, which is the knowledge that resides in us, the cognitive knowledge, the theoretical knowledge, the conceptual knowledge, that knowledge which resides in us, which we pass on to our learners and making them learn to know the theoretical part of it. The second pillar of learning in the 21st century is what many of you already perceived as the learning to do, which is the skills, the practicals, the problem solving, the application of theory to real life situations. And therefore, the second pillar is the learning to do. In a world which is moving towards sustainable development, we are talking about a third pillar of learning, and that is learning to live together and to live with others, which is the idea of peace and compassion, acceptance of diversity, and leading to new curricular areas of education for sustainable development, global citizenship education, peace education, universal human values, because no learning happens in war-torn societies or strife-driven societies. So the idea of human coexistence and a peaceful coexistence of humanism and harmonious coexistence results in new curricular areas, along with not just the realization that human beings need to coexist, but that all forms of living forms of the planet Earth and the environment, the flora, the fauna, the sources of energy, all these needs to be preserved, protected, so that it is there for future generations, leads to the idea of studying climate change and environment and protection of forest and all sorts of energy renewable sources and so on, which is to create peaceful, sustainable society. So the third pillar of learning and the new curricular areas that came up in the 21st century arises from learning to live together and to live with others. And the last pillar of learning is learning to be. Learning to be is the recognition that the 70 odd of us gathered over here in this virtual session is to recognize that Shakila thinks differently from Karma, that Bhaktiar Khan thinks differently from Sneha says. Each one of us are unique in terms of our likes and dislikes, our aspirations, our capabilities and potentials and competencies. If each one of us as our students are different, how is it that we think that they're all capable of doing the same thing? And therefore, the need to have individualization and customization. So the flexibility that is coming is the recognition of that last pillar of learning, where we are saying that if every student is different and unique, then we must recognize that differences among the students and must have different individualized approaches in their teaching learning processes. So the idea of flexibility in curricular choices, flexibility in pedagogy, flexibility in assessment, flexibility in language or the medium of instruction arises from the recognition that in a class of 30 or 100 students, they are not robots and identical clones of one another. And if they are not identical clones, someone is good at maths, someone may be good at language, someone may be good at social sciences. That recognition has to be taken on board. And therefore, the amalgamation of these 4 pillars of learning is the recognition that learning, like knowledge, is also multidimensional, and therefore in a given teaching learning space that we have, which may be a classroom, which can be an online session, you need to think about the learning to know, the learning to do, the learning to live together and to live with others, and the learning to be. This is the factor why an education system of today, offering undergraduate programs, looking at skilling, looking at general understanding, has to be multidimensional by nature. And along with these two drivers of change, which the policy has recognized, the third most important driver of change is the rise of the disruptive technologies. So the 1990s, we saw the rise of the computers, and we also saw the advent of the internet, which led to creating a decade of information where we saw data and facts being sent across countries and spaces and time in a synchronous manner, thanks to the internet and thanks to the computers. But in the 21st century, you see another set of technologies which, by its very name, it disrupts the way we work, we communicate, we travel, we bank, we do many things. It has disrupted the normal ways in which these were being done. And this has come through artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, data science, augmented reality. All these have resulted in challenging the kind of jobs that will come about tomorrow. You will hear adages being given that we do not know what the future jobs will look like. And we say that the job profiles will be changing very dynamically at a very, I would say, at an enormously fast speed, that we may not find the obsolescence of something or information seems to be a growing reality. And this is where our students are actually getting into. So the comfort zones that we were in and the uncertain world into which our students are going, which as we call is a VUCA world, which is volatile, which is uncertain, which is confusing and ambiguous, is calling for a different set of skills and a different approach to understanding knowledge, which is not just in disciplinary depth, but is also having a breadth of knowledge areas. And that is the reason why the NEP has said that it is imperative for us, not that it is a fancy, not that it is a romantic idea, and not that it is an imaginary understanding, that it is imperative and inevitable that if you want your students to become productive individuals, then you must empower them with the right kind of knowledge, skills, capabilities, and competencies to live in a world where knowledge is multidimensional, where learning is multidimensional, and where the disruptive technologies are challenging the job profiles. So in order to make our young students future ready for a world which is so uncertain, which is so volatile, which is so dynamic, and which is not the world in which we were when we were studying, we need to empower them with this kind of knowledge and skills. So the whole notion of holistic and multidisciplinary education, which is not just confined to higher education, but also there very much in the school education. And in the school education, I think even if you have read the policy or not read it, you must once again read through it and revisit it. We are talking about a paradigm of the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. The first 5 years between 3 to 8 being the foundational stage, 8 to 11 being the preparatory stage, 11 to 14 being the middle stage, and 14 to 18 being the secondary stage. In the national curriculum framework for the school education, we are bringing about a lot of changes in the curricular choices. And a class 10 student and a class 12 student does 8 curricular areas, which is in language education, mathematics education, science education, social science education, arts education, sports education, interdisciplinary areas, and vocational education. So all the students are getting exposed to a variety of curricular areas because we want them to achieve holistic, integrated learning and not just understand mathematics alone or languages alone or sciences alone or social sciences alone, but amalgamation of all this, so that there is a smattering of understanding of all this discipline, because one doesn't know, with the obsolescence of knowledge that is happening at such a tremendous speed, what is that particular knowledge area that that student can rely upon and upgrade himself or herself so as to be equipped to become a productive individual. So in a country like India, which is having the largest youth population in the world, and we are talking about a demographic dividend, which is a window of opportunity that we have up to 2047, it is very, very critical that we ensure that our youth are gainfully and productively engaged, so that they contribute to their individual growth, to the societal development, to the economic growth, to the nation's economic growth, and become what we call as 21st century global citizens. And if they are not productive individuals, they become the lumpen in the society who will be creating a lot of unrest and unchanneled energies that are there. Whereas world over, when there is an aging population, it is India which is going to provide the human capital to the entire world. And that soft power is where we need to ensure that they have the right kind of skills and knowledge and capabilities and competencies. So the 4-year undergraduate program that we brought about, and which many of you are in the process of trying to start implementing, looked at a very comprehensive kind of a curriculum, not with an intention to add to the curriculum load, but rather to give them a very, I would say, holistic exposure into various fields. And in this context, it would be very pertinent to mention that even if you've read through the policy, read it once again and read through the cardinal principles that we have outlined, and read through the UGC guidelines, which have been covering the 4-year undergraduate program, multiple entry and exit, how institutions transform into multidisciplinary institutions, academic bank of credit, national higher education qualification framework, national credit framework, the idea of global citizenship education, Indian knowledge systems, new ways of teaching and learning, that is pedagogy, outcome-based education. There are a whole set of guidelines, including internationalization, institutional development plan. There are all these guidelines, and also on internships. These guidelines would be able to give you insights into how you may be able to tackle some of these aspects relating to implementing the 4-year undergraduate program. Whether you are a part of that curriculum framing committee or not doesn't really matter. It is more in terms of becoming knowledgeable yourself is to the perspectives that you need to have when implementing it. Now, in the NEP, which is a very crisp document of just 66 pages, our committee report was 484 pages. The National Curriculum Framework is also around that same range of about 450 odd pages. Even if you have the inclination to read it, I would be happy about it, because it's not the street vendor or a shopkeeper who would read these documents. It is we as educators who have a moral responsibility to read through that. So even if you find out time at a very staggered way, you can download it and read it at your own pace and time. But the NEP 2020, please read it in its entirety. Don't read just the higher education part and think that that is done, because there is a logic in the way in which we looked at education. That is, that learning is happening in a single organic continuum as far as a student's learning journey is concerned. It doesn't matter whether it is a school or a college or a university. The principles of that learning remains the same, and we recognize the interconnectedness to as great an extent to say that a robust ECCE program, that is early childhood care and education, impacts higher education to a great extent in terms of life skills that the student has, in terms of the propensity to get a job and get employment, is not impacted so much as the school education, as much as the brain development that happened during the early childhood care and education. So the need for us as educators not to abdicate our responsibility and say that I don't have to read about it really is not a logic that seems to have any meaning for me as an educator, and appreciate the fact that you are all in a profession where you've chosen to be a teacher, then you must get yourself self-empowered by reading these documents. Now, the NEP articulates 22 cardinal principles. And the very first principle, it reads that an education system should be able to recognize, identify, and nurture the unique potential of every child and contribute, promote, and develop his or her holistic development. This is directly coming from that fourth pillar of learning, which is the learning to be, and the realization that in a classroom which has a bird, which has a cat, which has an elephant, which has a alligator, you put a goal that all of them will fly, and you say that, oh, we will teach you how to fly. We all know that except for the bird, the other species are incapable of flying. In a structured system, this is what we were doing. And this is where we want to change, realizing that individual students have individual capacities and individual competencies and individual levels of learning that they have. And being cognizant and mindful of that, that we need to provide them the flexibilities. So the idea of holistic multidisciplinary education, which is making out a case of going away from the standard structured silo-based degrees of arts, science, commerce, agriculture, pharmacy, medicine, and so on, arises with the requirement that we need to look at multidimensional knowledge. So the 4-year program, what does it do? It categorizes 6 categories of courses: common courses, core courses, interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary or open electives, nomenclatures are varying, ability enhancement courses, skill enhancement courses, and value-added courses. All undergraduate students will do mandatorily an internship program, because we have realized that when you say an undergraduate passing out is unemployable, and the ability of that student to have or gainfully get a job is very, very less. It arises from seemingly this very wide gap between the world of education and the world of work. And that is sought to be bridged by making it mandatory for every undergraduate student to do an internship. But I'll clarify that that is not corporate placement or industry placement. Now, the 6 courses: common courses, core courses, interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary or open elective, ability enhancement, skill enhancement, and value added. These courses are of this nature. When you say common courses, these common courses are not earmarked in your timetable or your calendar. You don't see a common course: digital skills, communication skills, research skills, problem solving skills. You might see Indian knowledge systems, you might see universal human values, but common courses are basically interdisciplinary courses. Whether I teach geography or whether I teach mechanical engineering or whether I teach chemistry, I weave in common courses in my class where I empower students with problem solving skills, analytical skills, communication skills, digital skills, understanding the environment. These all, we weave it into the curricula. They are not earmarked in the calendar. So that part of it is to be understood, that common courses, except for maybe a 2-credit course on Indian knowledge systems or a 2-credit course on universal human values or maybe environment, whatever, whichever each university wants to do, except for that, all other courses are basically as a faculty to be weaved into my curricular transaction when I am teaching my own discipline, and there is no earmarked course, separate earmarking in the calendar for the course. Then comes your core disciplinary, which is what most of us, when we talk that when I'm getting introduced, I'm a master's in political science kind of a thing. So I wanted to do it in political science, or you are in geography or in chemistry or in mechanical engineering. That is the core discipline in which the student wants to take up the undergraduate program. That is the second category of course. Now, to bring in that idea of multidimensionality, other than the core area, which is maybe sciences or social sciences, I will take up subjects in other disciplinary areas, which we call as the multidisciplinary or the interdisciplinary or the open elective. So an engineering student may be allowed to take up social sciences, or a science student may be allowed to take up commerce subjects, or a commerce student is allowed to take up agriculture subject in any combination. The limiting factor is the availability of that course in an institution or in a set of institutions which form a cluster. I'll come to that in a while. Ability enhancement courses. Since for the first time, undergraduate programs, and undergraduate, postgraduate, and doctoral programs, we said can be offered in regional languages. And even if it is being offered only in English language, the ability of language, communicative abilities of our students is one of the weakest areas. And therefore, ability enhancement courses are all such courses which enhance the communicative abilities of the student in a given language. It can be English language, it can be Hindi, it can be Marathi, it can be Gujarati, it can be Malayalam, whatever. It is all language enhancement, enhancing language ability courses and communicative skills in that language. Skills is what I told earlier. This entire policy misunderstanding that we've had since the 1990s, the early plans that came out in the 20th century, 21st century in 2000 and so on, even in our 11th plan and even in the 12th plan, we never realized that looking at skills as different from education is a lopsided education planning. Was when we realized in the policy that today the learning, second pillar of learning, the learning to do, has to be a part of learning to know and along with the other learning pillars. And therefore, the experiential part and the skills part of it is the skill enhancement courses. And let us not sit with this very outdated idea that skilling means we are preparing a person to become a mason or a carpenter or an electrician or a plumber and so on. The skill-based education today is absolutely of a very modern type. The entire micro, medium, and small scale industries, the MSME sector, the IT sector, the hospitality sector, the hotel industry, the services sector are all, Bhaktiyar, I'll take up your question only at the end now. All these will only be understood with a range of courses on blockchain management, supply chain management, logistics management, hospital administration, hotel management, agribusiness management, a range of courses. There are almost as many as about 85 courses that fall into this category today. And every institution should be able to offer skill enhancement courses subject to the availability of getting industry people around in that given area, so that the hands-on training that students need for doing the skill-based courses are available. Now, in this, when we brought about, I was privileged to be a part of the science, technology, and innovation policy. And we clearly said that the kind of infrastructure that would be needed for our skill enhancement courses should come in from departments dealing with S&T and technology and information technology and so on, so that there is a collaboration that is happening between the departments, so that institutions are provided these kind of infrastructure, provided the kind of trainers, provided the kind of people who can actually give hands-on training to our students. So the skill enhancement is also an embedded part of the 4-year undergraduate program. Then comes the value-added courses. And many of the engineering colleges, since we have someone from the engineering faculty, make skill enhancement and value-added a fungible kind, saying that both are either or kind of situation. But in all our non-engineering institutions, we look at it separately. And value-added courses are such courses which can be even a community project or an extension activity, or it can be media studies, it can be Internet of Things, it can be journalism, design thinking. There are new emerging areas where when students acquire credits in these areas, as I told to you, when we do not know what the future jobs are, if someone learned, let us say, design thinking, it is possible that that design thinking, maybe it's subject design, or it is communication design, or it is actual design as we look at in the, let us say, designing of material or things kind of thing, that will possibly help the students, and therefore they are seen as the modern emerging areas in which you provide value added courses. So this is the bouquet of 6 categories of courses. The outlining has been that the common courses are covered in up to the 3rd semester. Some of the skill enhancement can go on up to the 4th semester, and so on, which is more in terms of each higher education institution doing it in terms of availability of faculty, in terms of availability of the let us say the resources, the library resources, the computer resources, and other infrastructure, including physical infrastructure that they have. Now, this set of 6 courses, we are saying, is feasible in a manner that I would suggest to you that many of us are arts colleges, are science colleges, or commerce colleges. So when it comes to the multidisciplinary courses, you have a limiting factor that mine is only an arts college. How do I offer science courses, or how do I offer an engineering course? How do I offer an agriculture course or a law course or a pharmacy course? Because we have thrown it open. So for that, the UGC guidelines transforming institutions into multidisciplinaries say that in a given radius of about 10 kilometers in an urban setting, you can enter into a collaborative memorandum of understanding or an arrangement with another institution with a formalized MOU being signed between 2 or more institutions to make multidisciplinary courses available to the students. So yours is an arts college. Let's say there is a science college nearby, a commerce college nearby, a law college nearby, and agri. We are not limiting it to 1 college or 2 colleges. You can have MOUs with any number of colleges as long as it is a viable operational MOU that that institution can do. But in order to make multidisciplinarity a reality, we expect colleges and universities to come forward and collaborate with other institutions. And this is formalized in a manner where there is a common fee committee, there is a common calendar, academic calendar committee, and there is a common examination committee. Now let us assume you are in a rural area and the nearest college which can offer a multidisciplinary is, let's say, 30 kilometers away. Obviously, you don't expect a student to be shuttling between 30 kilometers in a day in a rural setting where transportation and mobility is deeply impacted and cannot be easily done. So the calendar that we frame would be that in such a manner that 4 days the student can be in an institution and 2 days that student is in the other institution. Now that is the reason why we talk about a common committee for framing the academic calendar, so that neither is the student having free time and wasting away the time, nor is the faculty in a college also idling because the student is not there. So this arrangement of entering into MOUs and converting single discipline institutions into multidisciplinary can be formalized through a memorandum of understanding. So the flexibility we are giving to the students is in the choice of courses, the possibility that the student can do it across multiple institutions. The third that we are giving is that if the student is not finding the available course in a face-to-face learning environment, we are allowing, as per the UGC norms, that does not apply to engineering and non-technical courses. 40% of the credits can be done through online courses, which are MOOCs courses, or through open universities or distance education institutions. So for the MOOCs, the SWAYAM platform of the Ministry of Education, run by the All India Council for Technical Education, offers a variety of courses. Let us say a student wants to learn German language and it is not there in a given vicinity, or the student wants to learn Internet of Things and it is not available in any of the institutions around, then that student can take it up as an online course, not through Coursera or edX or Udacity or any of the private providers, but only through the government authorized SWAYAM platform. These are either SWAYAM platform or the what we say Swayam Prabha, which is the direct to home channels. These courses can be taken up from online courses, or if there are universities like UP has a open university, or West Bengal has an open university, wherever there are open universities, or if conventional universities have directorates of distance education, from them also 240. So the third flexibility we are giving is to do it in the mode of learning. Then we have said that we give an exit option. The conventional idea was that it is a 3-year undergraduate program. A student must complete the 3 years in one go. Whereas now we are saying, okay, we can allow the student to take a break and come back within a certain given stipulated period. And the UGC guidelines for multiple entry and exit, along with the academic bank of credit guidelines, clearly stipulate a 7-year window where a student can take a break and come back to complete the undergraduate program. So the fourth flexibility is in the exit option. Now, in the structure of the program, we have said that exiting can be with a certification. And at the end of the first year, the student is entitled to get a UG certificate, provided the student completed the internship in that first year. Now, internship is a precondition to getting a certification. If you are exiting midway, if you don't want to do the internship, you will still get your credits retained, but you will not get a certification in your hand. Ideally, if the student wants to take a break, go out, work in the industry, and then come back, it is desirable that they complete their internship in the second semester itself. It can be in the fourth semester also, or it can be exiting in the after 6 semesters, where the student is completely exiting the undergraduate program. But internship has to be completed for certification. So first year it is a UG certificate, second year it is a UG diploma. Third year it is a bachelor's. So the student will get a bachelor's, and the student is free to exit the undergraduate program. It is not mandatory for the student to go into the fourth year. We are allowing a complete exit at the end of the third year. 6 semesters, 120 credits, that is 40 credits per year. You can exit your undergraduate program. Now, every year, the 40 credits that you accumulate is given with this idea that when you're leaving at 120 credits, you must take more than 50% of the credits in a given course so as to get a specialization in that. So let us assume I took up political science along with, let us say, chemistry, but I wanted my majoring to be in political science. I must have a minimum of 48 credits out of that 120 credits in which I do courses that deal with political science. So I can take, even in the 3-year undergraduate, I can get it with a specialization. It can be called a major, but it will not be called an honors. And you can exit the undergraduate program altogether. If you're going into the fourth year, you are being given 2 options, where in your 7th and the 8th semester, you do coursework. And wherever you take more than 50% credit with a minimum threshold of 64 credits, you can get it with a bachelor's with honors, where you can have more than 2 majors, or you can have 1 major and a couple of minors. But that is bachelor's with honors, and that is a 4-year undergraduate program. The third option we are giving you is the 4th year can be with a research. In your 7th and 8th semester taken together, you will be submitting undertaking a detailed research project and submitting something equivalent to an MPhil dissertation, and that is called a bachelor's with honors and research, and that entitles you to actually get a certain benefit. So where are the flexibilities? In the choice of courses, of course, in the medium of instruction that we are already saying, the choice of courses, in the combination across institutions, open and distance learning courses, the modes of learning, that is, exiting at the end of every year. The 3 years bachelor's will do a 2 years master's, not the current existing 2 years master's, the revised PG program, which is being put in public domain by the UGC for seeking comments. That revised PG program also talks of 40 credits per year and also talks of multidisciplinarity with a possibility of exit at the end of the first year. So a 3-year bachelor's will do a 2 years master's. A 4-year bachelor's with honors will do a 1 year's master's. and that is also in the process of revision. And the 4-year bachelor's with research is exempted from master's and can join the PhD program directly. So this is the architecture of the new 4-year undergraduate program, and that we are giving a 7-year window and allowing this kind of credit accumulation and ensuring mobility across institutions, taking a break, joining another institution is all facilitated through 3 instrumentalities. One is the academic bank of credit, which is a digital storage of credits acquired by the students and which is maintained for in the cloud and therefore is available for retrieval at any point, at any place. For it can be for eternity kind of a thing. And institutions onboard onto the ABC portal. Students also onboard onto it through the DigiLocker account, and that we are now calling it as an authenticated personal academic authentication registration number. That is APAR. Earlier we thought we could use Aadhaar, but since Aadhaar is being linked for a number of other purposes, we are creating a student ID, which is a digital ID of the student. And that digital ID is actually being done right from schooling onwards, from class 8 onwards. Whereas for those who are coming into higher education and are already here, they would be actually creating a new ID based on the requirements of the ABC portal for undergraduate education. Now, this storage of digital credits means that where as a student, let us assume I did let us assume that if there is an undergraduate program in AMU, or since it's not a affiliating university, let us assume that if there is an undergraduate, I did from there some credits, and I did it from some other university, some other credits. I did from open and distance learning. I took a break, came back after 3 years and continued my, all this data is not maintained in physical form, but it is maintained in a digital form, and that facilitates the possibility for allowing these kind of flexibilities across time, across institutions, across duration, and so on, that we are permitting. Now, when we talk about this kind of an architecture, the need for us also as faculty to completely transform ourselves becomes very inevitable. And therefore, the role of a faculty will have to change, because so long we have had created some artificial hierarchy of disciplines in our mind, where we thought that mathematics is hierarchically a superior discipline than, let's say, history. Whereas today we realize that all disciplines in their own right are equally important, and it is left to the learner to decide which one that the student takes as per one's aspirations and as per one's competencies. But what is important for us as faculty is to shed our academic egos and start talking to departments other than our own departments and think in terms of collaboration. So collaboration is the key to 21st century learning ecosystems. And the emphasis from teacher to the learner is what the NEP is trying to talk about. So we've been using it in a cliche. We've been saying learner-centered. It is no learner-centered. It is only learner-centered now. When the learner decides the choices, when the learner is sort of spacing out the program of study, that is the learner. And the teacher, in the role of information giver, is no longer relevant because of the technology and the availability of information. And therefore, the role of a teacher becomes one of a facilitator, an enabler, a motivator, a mentor, all these new roles in terms of helping the learner how to learn in a more effective manner. So learning how to learn is the new mantra that we as faculty need to start embracing. And we cannot have a situation where classrooms are having only a monologue, where there is no learner interaction that is taking place. So the need to convert classrooms into active learning environments where there is learner to learner engagement, learner to faculty engagement, and learner to content engagement through a variety of activities, quizzes, group discussions, oral presentations, role plays, small projects, activities, visits that they conduct, field surveys that they conduct. These are the ways in which we engage our learners. So When we calculate a credit of 1 hour, that we say when we say 1 credit is equal to 30 hours of study, actually in terms of a teacher, it works out to almost 60 hours, because a teacher has to plan a lesson plan where the teacher will factor in my 1 hour talk, in my 1 hour session. I will talk for maybe 20 minutes. I will ask a group discussion for maybe 15 minutes. I will put students to do an activity or a quiz for this much time. And this is the pedagogy that I am using. With this, let us say, the assessment that I want, where you are not going to assess the memorization capability of a student and rote learning, but rather testing their analytical skills, their problem solving skills, their collaborative skills, their communicative skills, all which we call are capable of making our students becoming rational individuals, capable of independent decision making and thought process. So in today's world, where an employer looks at a graduate from the point of view of having so-called 21st century skills and the graduate attributes of higher order thinking skills, you and I are graduates who are normally described as being I-shaped graduates, where we only had a single disciplinary depth. Whereas a graduate of today is expected to be a T-shaped graduate. The alphabet T has an upper bar. That upper bar is representative of multiple knowledge disciplines, of multiple skill sets, of multiple competencies and capabilities. So in that scenario, our role has to be to encourage mentoring, has to be to encourage them to participate in their classroom activities through a variety of methods. And in the internships that we are talking of, because there was a question on that, engineering students, management students, medical students, agriculture students, they will do internships in their own relevant area. But when we say all undergraduate, we cannot think of industry or corporate accommodating them. We want them to acquire those skills which are useful in their work environments of working together as a team, collaboration, communication, gathering data, talking to people, collating data. It can be a community related one. It can be with a retired scientist. It can be with a retired educationist. It can be with a doctoral student. It can be with a PG department. It can be with a library. It can be with a media house. It can be with a museum. It can be with a journal, with a particular newspaper house. Many such possibilities. Go through the UGC guidelines on internships and you will get a variety of these, and whichever works is workable in your own institution, because we can't think of one size fits all. Every institution is at different levels of preparedness, and therefore we need a very multi-pronged way in which we look at it. What works in Delhi may not work in Aligarh. What works in Aligarh in a given college may not work in another college. So we are used to the idea that there will be many, many facets in which we implement it. And as such, you must understand, education never promotes the idea of homogenization. It is a very Hitlerian term when you talk of homogenization. You must allow a multiple set of flowers to bloom. So let 100 flowers bloom in what is appropriate to the infrastructure, to the teaching resources, to the teacher faculties available within the aspirations of the students, and make things possible to achieve the idea of multidisciplinarity. Now we qualified it with the word holistic. When you say holistic, you need to understand about the idea that the development of an individual is not just the knowledge development or the cognitive development. It is also the emotional development, the physical development, the moral development, the ethical development, the aesthetic development, the artistic development, the spiritual development, all the technological development. So when you say holistic development, not just providing career counseling and academic counseling, you also need to look at students to be able to participate in arts related activities. So you should encourage debating clubs, poetry clubs, eco clubs, sports, a lot of other activities, so that students have an opportunity for participating in all these activities. Because under the idea of multidisciplinarity, we are allowing a student to take up mathematics and music. We are allowing them to take up a sport. We are allowing them to take up dance. We are allowing them to take up in all performing arts fields. And colleges and universities should be providing spaces to nurture the talent of such students who are interested in such areas. Along with that is an equally important aspect that we need to nurture and encourage their participation in sports and well-being. The health part of it, health and fitness, is very important, because we always believe that these would help the psychomotor development, this would help the physical development, and we should nurture the health and well-being of our students in ensuring that they participate in sports and other physical education activities. Along with this is the very important new sensitive area that we are dealing with, and that is the mental well-being of students. So the social skills, the emotional skills of our students are becoming more and more important. Why? Because the student of today is one who is very, very isolated, thanks to that beautiful small gadget that we all carry in our hands, and where individual sharing and grievance redressal mechanisms, which we used to do with friends, with family, are no longer there. And they're living in an imaginary world of the Facebook and the Instagram and so on. And as a consequence, all the pent-up fears and anxieties and problems that youngsters seem to have do not have opportunities for being let out. That is resulting in mental disorders, depression, bipolar disorders, and a number of neurological disorders that students are, which we are now calling as the neurodivergent set of problems. And that is to be addressed through psychological counseling. All of you will tell, I am not a psychology faculty, or I am not a psychiatrist to be able, but we should be able to be sensitive to behavioral disorders in our students. The NEP recommended that in addition to the regular academic counseling and career counseling, we must encourage having psychological counselors also there. But in the absence of such positions, you must also try and see whether you are able to gauge a change in the behavior of our students. So the entire issues of drug abuse, substance abuse, student suicides are matters of grave concern, directly resulting from the absence of the mental well-being of the students. Two more small points. When you talk of holistic and multidisciplinary, we need to encourage research, and therefore the research culture in undergraduate education will be provided a great degree of impetus by having the NRF funding. Also create industry academia cells, so that there is a culture of understanding what is needed for our industry, incubation centers, innovation centers, and moving towards startups and cultures of that kind, where we are talking about entrepreneurial skills. So research and innovation, entrepreneurship, setting up of incubation centers, innovation centers, industry academia cells, R&D cells, all this is contributing to a very holistic approach of undergraduate education, which understands that teaching and research, along with skills and entrepreneurship, all go together in making a very robust undergraduate program. Let me stop here and give you all some 5 minutes for interaction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Participants, if you want to interact, ma'am, or you have any query questions, you can ask. Ma'am is there with us. So already you have asked so many questions. If you still, after her lecture, if you have any doubts, you can ask me.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your session. And so I feel like this should have been the introductory session, because I personally came with a tunnel vision, and then I had so many questions. I did not even need to ask it. As the session progressed, all my questions were answered already. And thank you so much, ma'am. This was a great opportunity. I was looking at this NEP as a Herculean task, but you literally chopped it into pieces and small bites for us to understand. And then I think I also feel little prepared because we are going to start with NEP from next year only. And I feel like now I have little confidence of like how to deal with this and how to go about my role as a teacher, like what I can do and how can I promote this and help our students. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you,
I
Karma.
think Dr. Bhaktiyar had some
Ma-
question. I told him allow him to ask it. Yes, Anil Kumar, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am, you talk about credit system, then I want to ask that once again, if you define credit.
Okay, credit is for us a notional understanding of the time that a student takes to cover a course. So when we say a course is 4 credits, the assumption is it involves 120 hours because one credit is valued as notionally valued as 30 hours of study. How do we notionally arrive at that? We notionally arrive at 30 hours when you say one
एक
credit
क्रेडिट में कितने
as
घंटे की
saying that
क्लास
the
हो
person
सकती
has
है?
gone through. Yes, please.
वन क्रेडिट
No,
में
when
कितने
you
आवर्स की क्लास हो सकती है? वन
नहीं, हर
क्रेडिट
एक
में कितने
कोर्स
घंटे
को
की?
वो क्रेडिट जो आप क्लास की तरफ से बोल रहे हैं, एक क्रेडिट जो कोर्स है,
जी,
एक जो हम 120 क्रेडिट्स अंडर ग्रेजुएट प्रोग्राम में बोल रहे हैं, सो 120 क्रेडिट्स इनटू 30 आवर्स, दिस मेनी आवर्स ऑफ स्टडी द स्टूडेंट हैज डन. सो कोर्स का क्रेडिट होता है. ये अजम्पशन ये है कि एक क्रेडिट 30 घंटे होते हैं. ये अजम्पशन अराइव्ड इसलिए किया है कि जो एक स्टूडेंट समझो एक पुस्तक पढ़ते हैं, उसके असाइनमेंट्स देते हैं, क्लास अटेंड कर रहा है, उसका लेट अस से इंटरनल एग्जामिनेशन दे रहे हैं, फाइनल सेमेस्टर के एग्जाम दे रहे हैं, तो एक अजम्पशन है कि लेट अस से थियोरीज ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स एक पेपर है जो 4 क्रेडिट का होगा, तो उसका अजम्पशन 4 क्रेडिट इज इक्वल टू 120 आवर्स ऑफ स्टडी. ये 120 आवर्स ऑफ स्टडी स्टूडेंट जब एग्जामिनेशन देगा, स्टूडेंट जब उसका असाइनमेंट सबमिट करेगा, अटेंडेंस ऑफ कोर्स हमने शायद 75% ही रखे. एक अजम्पशन है कि ये सब जो मिनिमम रिक्वायरमेंट्स उस कोर्स का कवर कर चुका है, तो उन्होंने 120 आवर्स ऑफ स्टडी कंप्लीट कर दिया है. और क्योंकि टीचर की तरफ से कई कई संस्थाओं ने अपने गाइडलाइंस में ये भी स्पेसिफाई किया है, इसलिए मैंने आपको क्लैरिफाई किया कि जब हम एक क्रेडिट 30 आवर्स छात्र के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से देखेंगे, जो टीचर सिखाते हैं, तो हम 60 आवर्स कैलकुलेट कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि जब मैं एक शिक्षक होते हुए क्लास में जा रही हूं, तो मेरा सिर्फ जितने क्लास का टाइम है उतना नहीं कैलकुलेट किया है. मैंने उस क्लास को तैयारी करने के लिए जो प्रिपरेशन टाइम है, अगर एग्जामिनेशन सेट करना है तो जो प्रिपरेटरी टाइम है, जो मैंने एक्टिविटीज वर्कआउट किया है, फील्ड स्टडी, ग्रुप डिस्कशन, इसके लिए जो प्रिपेयर किया है, ये सबको देखते हुए, क्योंकि हमने बोला है आप एक्टिव लर्निंग एनवायरमेंट्स करते हो, आप सिर्फ जाके लेक्चर नहीं देंगे, तो उसके लिए एक अजम्पशन हो गया कि एज अ फैकल्टी मेरा जब वर्कलोड कैलकुलेट करेंगे, तो मैंने ऑलरेडी I have put in 60 hours in terms of that preparation for that class that I have taken. This is how it is notional. Not that हम घंटे काउंट करके बैठेंगे, बट ये नोशनली हमने अराइव किया है, और इंटरनेशनली यही एक्सेप्टेड नॉर्म है कि 1 क्रेडिट इज सीन एज 30 आवर्स ऑफ स्टडी. तो आपका 2 क्रेडिट का कोर्स आप अगर संभाल रहे हैं, तो ये 2 क्रेडिट का मतलब ये सिर्फ 60 घंटे का इन्वॉल्वमेंट आती है, दैट इज 60 आवर्स. If it is 4 credits, it is 120 hours. If it's 8 credits, it goes on accordingly. So it's calculated like that.
मैम एक सवाल और है कि डिपार्टमेंट में ऑनर्स होते हैं, तो ऑनर्स होते हैं, सब्सिडरी होते हैं, उसके साथ में पास कोर्स भी होते हैं, लेकिन जो NEP 2020 में मेजर कोर्स और माइनर कोर्स, वैल्यू एडेड कोर्स दिया है, तो मेजर कोर्स और माइनर कोर्स में क्या बेसिक डिफरेंस क्या है? कैसे पता चलेगा कि स्टूडेंट किस सब्जेक्ट से ऑनर्स कर रहे
माइनर
हैं?
कोर्सेज सिर्फ 12 से 18 क्रेडिट के होते हैं, वेयरएज मेजर कोर्सेज करना है तो 3 साल के डिग्री में आपको मिनिमम 48 क्रेडिट्स करना है, और अगर 4 साल के होगा तो मिनिमम 64 क्रेडिट्स करना है. तो द क्रेडिट्स जो अक्वायर करेंगे, हाँ जी,
मैम मैं क्रेडिट की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, मेजर कोर्स और माइनर कोर्स में
मेजर और
ऑनर्स
माइनर तो
का
क्रेडिट से
डिफाइन
ही
कैसे करेंगे?
कैलकुलेट होती है। मेजर और माइनर
ऑनर्स
क्रेडिट
में
के
किस
हिसाब
डिफाइन हो
से ही
जाएगा सर?
कैलकुलेट होते हैं। आप 6 कोर्सेज करेंगे अंडर ग्रेजुएट में, कॉमन कोर्सेज है, कोर कोर्सेज है जो आप समझ रहे हैं कि आपका मेजर होगा, आपका इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी कोर्सेज है जो हो सकता है आपका माइनर होगा। इसके सिवाय आप एबिलिटी एनहांसमेंट भी करोगे, स्किल एनहांसमेंट भी करोगे और वैल्यू एडेड करेंगे। अब जब हम मेजर और माइनर की बात बोल रहे हैं, ज्यादातर ये आपका कोर और इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी में ही आ जाती है, जो कन्वेंशनली जब आपने स्टडी किया है, आप जैसे समझ सकते हो कि पॉलिटिकल साइंस आपका मेजर है और माइनर आपका लेटर से सोशियोलॉजी था। लेकिन आज हम बोल रहे हैं कि आपका मेजर अगर फिजिक्स है तो आपका माइनर हो सकता है कि वो इंग्लिश होगा या हिंदी होगा या सोशियोलॉजी होगा या इकोनॉमिक्स होगा। अब आप मेजर और माइनर को किस तरह से डिफरेंशिएट कर रहे हैं इज द नंबर ऑफ क्रेडिट्स। अगर आपको मेजर करना है 3 साल का डिग्री में तो मिनिमम 48 क्रेडिट्स का कोर्स आप उस विषय में लेना है जिसमें आपको मेजर चाहिए। और अगर आप 4 साल के कर रहे हो तो मिनिमम 64 क्रेडिट्स चाहिए। और माइनर के लिए हम रेंज जो रखा हुआ है वो 12 से 18 क्रेडिट्स के हिसाब से है। तो मेजर और माइनर का कैलकुलेशन क्रेडिट से संबंधित है और उसी हिसाब से स्टूडेंट को मेजर और माइनर हम दिखा सकते हैं।
मैम एक क्वेश्चन है।
थैंक्स मैम।
Ma'am, how this NEP will change the way we take competitive examination like NEET and IIT JEE?
So we are now saying that the NEET, CUET, IIT, JEE will not take what we conventionally used to do as the PCM and PCB and so on, but all the 8 curricular areas that we cover in our class 12 will be seen as the eligibility where the weightage is given to the class 12 exams. That weightage is taken in totality. So 8 curricular areas, whatever they have covered in the new revised manner would be seen as the eligibility for that. So this obsession with only physics, chemistry, maths or physics, chemistry, biology, that, whether it is for IIT, JEE, whether it is for NEET, these things are getting changed in the criteria for the entrance examinations. And since we have clearly stipulated that all entrance examinations will only be conducted by the National Testing Agency, they will rationalize and recalibrate it on the basis of this criteria because it is aligning itself to the NEP pattern.
Ma'am, there are some authorities like Indian Medical Council Pharmacy Council of India that provide the Bar Council of India that provided some registration to the people who conducted the who actually go through the MBBS of pharmacy. So, is there if the curriculum is going to be diversified, then how they can change their criteria for registration, ma'am?
They have already given their consent to be aligning themselves to the NEP. Bar Council of India, Medical Council of the NMC, the National Medical Commission, all these councils are now aligning their own courses to become diversified as per NEP. So there is no question of their not being able. The certification that you're talking is for their professional registration and not in terms that gives you the right to practice as a law, the right to practice as a doctor, to be a pharmacist. That is the registration that they're talking about. And once they have already decided that they will also diversify as per the NEP requirement, and they have already been doing that, the exercise is on. There is no question of there being any discord in understanding how that registration would take place and how the program itself is getting curricularly changed for meeting with the NEP alignment.
Ma'am, one last question. Ma'am, if we are moving towards a more industrial or skill-based development, we required more professional from industry to take time and teach our student. Did it affect the burden on the parents for as the fees goes up?
No, so basically we have created opportunities where industry can come and teach us in terms of, I am not talking about the self-financing, but largely the fee structure should not really get affected because we are engaging industry practitioners as professors of practice. and they have agreed that they would come and be a part, because the corporate sector cannot abdicate their social responsibility to higher education. They are the takers of our graduates, and they have to also contribute both financially, infrastructurally, and in human resources to the betterment of higher education. So there is a clear understanding that industry and education would go hand in hand, and therefore they have very much through their industry associations, in all our conversations with all the industry associations, agreed that they would be a part of the higher education ecosystem, so that they are actually the drivers, where they are providing skill courses and so on to make it more, let us say, relevant to the new emerging economic needs of the country and also globally.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much,
I think there
participants.
is
We have
some
another.
Dr. Pratima who's raised her hand. Can we take
Yes.
that as the last question?
हाँ मैम, हाँ मैं एक क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहती हूँ। प्रणाम मैम, मैं काजी नजरुल विश्वविद्यालय पश्चिम बंगाल आसनसोल से बोल रही हूँ। और अभी हमारे विभाग में मैम ये NEP को लेकर ही वो करिकुलम डिजाइन हो रहा है, और उस पर हम लोग वर्कशॉप भी ऑर्गेनाइज कर रहे हैं, तो उसमें बहुत सारी कठिनाइयां आ रही हैं। क्या मुझे कृपया आप बताएंगी कि ये जो 4 इयर्स डिग्री कोर्स है UG का, तो उसमें जो ऑनर्स जो लेंगे उसमें फिर वो कई लोग उसमें इसमें चले जाएंगे, रिसर्च में चले जाएंगे, तो ये क्या है मैम? उसमें मैं थोड़ा सा समझ नहीं पा रही।
लेट मी क्लैरिफाई। 3 साल का डिग्री भी है, 4 साल जिसमें 3 साल का डिग्री है, हम ऑनर्स नहीं कहेंगे, हम सिर्फ स्पेशलाइजेशन करेंगे और मेजर बताएंगे। जो 4 साल करेंगे एकेडमिक वर्क के लिए, उसमें हम ऑनर्स देंगे। लेकिन जो 4 साल रिसर्च करना चाहेंगे, आई लेफ्ट आउट दैट पॉइंट, ग्लैड यू ब्रॉट इट अप। ये नहीं है कि जो भी 3 साल का प्रोग्राम किया है उसको वॉक इन है, जो बैचलर्स विथ रिसर्च है, मिनिमम कट ऑफ 75% या 7.5 CGPA होना चाहिए। Only such students will be allowed to take in bachelors with research। जिसका नॉर्मल परसेंटेजेस है और वो 4 ईयर प्रोग्राम करना चाहते हैं, वो 4 इयर्स में जा सकते हैं। और जो 4 ईयर में आउट ऑफ 160 क्रेडिट्स, मिनिमम 64 क्रेडिट्स एक डिसिप्लिन में अगर कवर करेंगे, तो उसको हम बोल सकते हैं कि वो बैचलर्स विथ ऑनर्स इन दैट डिसिप्लिन हम अवार्ड कर सकते हैं। तो इस तरह से हम 3 कैटेगराइजेशन किए हैं। और जब आप करिकुलम डिजाइन करते हैं, आपका कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ कोर्सेज इस तरह से होना चाहिए, आप डिसाइड मतलब आप कोर्सेज ऑफर करेंगे, स्टूडेंट को वो ऑप्शंस देना चाहिए ताकि उसको वो मिनिमम नंबर ऑफ क्रेडिट्स मिल सकते हैं, ताकि वो ऑनर्स डिग्री का काबिलियत में आ जाए।
तो मैम ये रिसर्च कौन कराएगा? मैंने यूनिवर्सिटी टीचर कराएगा कि कॉलेज टीचर?
जो नॉर्मल PhD डिग्री के लिए सिखा सकते हैं, जो क्वालिफाइड है, उन्हीं को देना है, जो प्रोफेसर्स है। दे कैन नॉट बी असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर्स और एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर्स, ओनली प्रोफेसर्स। और अगर आपके संस्था में प्रोफेसर्स नहीं है, तो दूसरे संस्था के प्रोफेसर के साथ उनका वो रिसर्च कवर कर सकते हैं। बट दैट कैन नॉट बी डन इन अ कॉलेज वेयर ओनली असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर्स और एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर्स आर देयर।
अच्छा, यूनिवर्सिटी में असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर करा सकते हैं?
नहीं, इट हैज टू बी अ प्रोफेसर।
अच्छा, तो मैम इसके लिए तो PhD की सीटें बढ़ाई जाएंगी?
सीटें बढ़ाने की बात नहीं है। जब मोमेंट आप PhD बन जाएंगे तो आप रिसर्च गाइड नहीं बन सकते हैं। आपका जब पोजीशन करियर ग्रोथ में आप प्रोफेसर बनते हो, तभी आप क्वालिफाई होते हैं 4 ईयर डिग्री के ऑनर्स में जो रिसर्च प्रोजेक्ट की बात बताए हैं।
ओके मैम, थैंक यू मैम।
Thank you, ma'am, because we have another session at 5:30 for your this very, I will say, detailed lecture in each and every aspect of NEP and multidisciplinary and holistic development. With these words, I would like to thank you, ma'am, again on behalf of HRDC ABU. Thank you, ma'am. Participants, you join with new link for the next lecture.
Thank you, and all of you, all the very best. Don't get overawed. Every problem has a solution, and you will also do it successfully. Don't worry about it.
मैम क्या आपको यूनिवर्सिटी से जोड़ा जा सकता है? बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम आ रही है।
वेरी नॉलेजेबल फॉर अस।
थैंक यू। आफ्ताब साहब, ये इनका आप स्लाइड्स दे सकते हैं प्लीज?
ये लेक्चर आपको मिल जाएगा सर, आपको ये लेक्चर पूरा, आपको लेक्चर YouTube पे 1-2 दिन बाद हम स्ट्रीमिंग कर देते हैं।
थैंक यू सो मच।
आफ्ताब सर।
थैंक यू मैडम
जी।
आफ्ताब सर, बहुत अभी समस्याएं हो रही है NEP को लेकर। वर्कशॉप हम लोग फिर से ये ऑर्गेनाइज करने वाले हैं, तो क्या मैम को जोड़ा जा सकता है?
आप मैम से बात कर लीजिएगा, मैं आपको तो उसमें वो कर दूंगा, लेकिन अभी फिलहाल आप लोग दूसरे मीटिंग में ज्वाइन करिए, सर ज्वाइन कर चुके हैं।
ठीक ठीक
ठीक, थैंक यू।
थैंक यू।